What is up, YouTube? This is your host, Ranee B, here to spill that homicidal tea. And today's case, man, I gotta warn y'all. I get on these binges. Like right now, my current one is Forensic Files, and I'm all into this show again. So these cases might be some familiar for some of y'all, but y'all younger folks, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're so riveting to me. And so I just want to retell them here on the channel. So I mean, like if you've heard them before, just bear with me. But I mean, as usual, just let me know if you have heard them in the comments or not, or just reach out to me on Twitter or X, whatever. Anyway, as always, please like and subscribe. It always helps the channel grow. And also let me know if you've heard about these. Like I said, I really, really try to cover cases that a lot of other creators don't cover. So if I'm doing the exact same cases as other folks on here, just let me know. Be like, dude, you're redundant. We've already heard it. But anyway, now that that's all out of the way, let's get into it. The solved homicide case of Joshan Ashbrook. Joshan Ashbrook was a vibrant, talented young musician. She had always been gifted musically, frequently writing songs with her sister and a lot on her own. She wanted to eventually become a professional singer, entertainer, but if that wasn't in the cards, she would always defer to music or entertainment law. Still in that lifestyle, brimming with creativity and passion, just like Joshan. As with a lot of creative types, Joshan was a bit of a handful for her parents. Never really, anything too terrible, but they would get into squabbles and whatnot. But she would have, even take off and be like, I'm out of here, I'm running away, and then, a couple hours later she'd return. It was no big deal, But it's just teens, kids, One of the more heated arguments it erupted over Joshan's parents, accusing her of smoking marijuana. It was a pretty big dust up, and her parents thought, though, the minute they saw her fly out the front door in her little, modus operandi, if you will, she'd come back in a while ready to talk and hammer things out. But when she didn't come back home later that night, her parents became a little worried, and they reported her as a missing person, knowing that she would more than likely turn up again. No big deal. That was on July 31st, 2002, and Joshan leaving that morning out the front door, her family had no idea that was the last time they would ever see her alive again. That very next morning, Ashbrook's partially clothed body was found in the woods off of Shady Hills Road by an electrical workman. The autopsy reported that Joshan suffered blunt force wounds to her head and face, and in addition to those injuries, she suffered a very serious gash across her throat. Her hands, though, told quite a tale of a fight for survival. They were covered in defensive wounds. I mean, none of those injuries are what took her life, though. It was determined by the medical examiner that the killer had broken Joshan's neck by placing her in a wrestling position, sometimes referred to as a half Nelson. Now, it's a legal wrestling move, however, if you do it too aggressively, it can be extremely dangerous and applies pressure in certain places on the cervical region of your spine. And if it's used incorrectly, it can be fatal like that. It was determined that even though her pants weren't located, no indecent assault had occurred. But that's not the only tale that Joshan would tell from beyond the grave. She had one more tidbit of evidence for the detectives. A hair, frozen in time during her fatal fight. A single hair embedded in one of the many lacerations on her hand. And it still had a fully intact root attached to it. Police combed the scene of the site where they had found her body, and they noticed fresh tire prints in the sandy loam that was next to the grassy area where Joshan lay in her final moments. The tracks were perfect. They were captured by forensic detectives in a plaster cast and all that. And, it's really cool. I love that stuff. It looks like frosting. Maybe I'm the only fatso that thinks that, but every time they pour it, I'm like, ooh, it looks like cake batter. Anyway, well, that hardens and it comes out with a beautiful pattern of all the intricacies and little tiny imperfections of the tire treads. So it's a really good tool. Well, they compared it to patterns in the national database, and at that time, 2002, there were about 20,000 different tires from all over the world. Can you imagine how many there are now? Oh my gosh. Anyway, well, the good news was that only 7 tires in the world were considered potential matches to this particular tread pattern. So they were getting closer. So, well, meanwhile, police received a call from a woman stating that on July 31st, about 8:30 in the morning, Joshan had called her looking for her son. And while the woman said he wasn't at home, Joshan asked if it was okay if she brought by a letter for him. And, the young man's mother stated that that would be fine. So a little later, that same woman, she saw a red truck pull up out front. It was driven by a man in his mid-30s and had a little girl in the front seat with them as well. The call actually came from a cell phone, and it appeared on the woman's caller ID box. I don't know if y'all remember those, but God, really feeling old. The officers called the number and a man answered, and they asked him about Joshan. He said, yes, actually, I'd given a girl a ride this morning and she needed to go by and drop a letter off, and she didn't know if he was going to be home, and she asked me to use my cell phone. So in addition, he told detectives that they went by, dropped the letter off, and then after that they went to Walmart, just ending their time together. He dropped her off and him and his daughter went on. Basically, he was just helping a girl get a ride, nothing more. Detectives wanted to get an official statement, of course. So they asked the man, who identified himself as Philip Thompson, to come down to the station to have a formal recorded interview so they could just put it in their case file. Philip said that would be fine, promised to go to the police station, never showed up.
Not too smart.
When Philip didn't show up for the scheduled time for his in-person interview, police looked into who owned that cell phone so they could possibly, pay him a visit. Because at this time, they were just wanting to scratch him off the list. The owner came back as a Philip, not Philip Thompson, came back as a Philip Parton. The same Philip Parton that was listed in the police records as a convicted killer. In 1987, he was found guilty of the murder of Gary Thorne. Now, I've seen conflicting cases, talk about whether or not Gary was a sex worker or just a guy that was out looking for fun. Either way, who cares? Get your freak on. I don't care. Doesn't mean you need to be, a victim of a murder. So like I've said on this channel, I don't care what you do, except for killing other people. No. Anyway, but whatever you do, you boo. That's your kink. Go for it. Other than that, you don't deserve to die. So regardless, sex worker or not, Gary was at this bar and Philip had picked him up. Well, they went back to Gary's apartment where Philip violently assaulted him and used a phone cord to choke him to death. He then went through the guy's apartment and stole his money, bank cards, and car. Philip was convicted of second-degree murder, but he only got 6 years for it. Way to go, justice system. By 1995, Philip, the killer, not Thompson, whoever that was, this guy was a free man. Police looked into the CCTV footage from Walmart on the day that Joshan disappeared, and police found that at 8:48 a.m., his truck arrived in the parking lot. And they were also seen on the interior footage, the man, his daughter, and Joshan. They looked like they made a couple of purchases, some fishing poles it looked like, and then they departed in the same vehicle. Police, they sent out a BOLO alert and bulletins all over the country trying to locate this man. At this point, Philip had become a focus of a nationwide manhunt. Police agencies all over worked together, and it finally emerged that he and his daughter, Patricia, had been staying with a friend that he had made while he was incarcerated, in Newport Richey, Florida. After securing a search warrant for the home, detectives went to the location to see if they could find any traces of Joshan anywhere. Nothing was broken or messed up, like a fight took place, and nothing really stood out. At first look, cops didn't discover anything in Philip's room. Not until they removed the area rug that had been in between the beds and discovered a massive stain that smelled like bleach. When they tore the carpet back, oh my gosh, they saw this huge stain in the padding. It was a monstrous dark red stain, presumably blood, like 4 feet across. Whoever this blood came from, they didn't survive. They took samples of the blood for DNA testing, and forensics investigator with an eagle eye noticed a drop of blood on the wall, took a sample of that too. All the samples came back as matching Joshan's DNA. Philip Must have thought he was way smarter than the detectives. See, he was in near constant contact with them via his cell phone, or whoever's cell phone. This must have been before they had real accurate triangulation, because now, 1 second of that phone call, boop, there you are, boo, we coming for you. Anyway, that jackass Philip, dude, he called detectives over and over, just trying to get info from them on what they knew, how, they were coming along with the investigation, but eventually he must have gotten bored because he just quit calling. And the police officers had other things to do anyway. So about 50 miles away from that crime scene, in a different parking lot, Walmart again, authorities discovered an abandoned red pickup truck. This was almost 2 months after the murder. But what was odd is that the tires on this truck were bald. Nothing like the tracks left in the sandy loam at the crime scene. This guy, Philip. There were reels of film, like those little undeveloped canisters that, remember we've talked about it. If y'all don't know what it is, just Wikipedia it. I'm old.
What I am is an old fuck.
Found those in the glove compartment. Well, detectives had them developed. And what do you know? Philip liked his truck a lot. He took a lot of pictures of it. Pictures that had wild country tires installed on it. Remember earlier when I said there were only 7 tires that could have matched those tire tracks? Out of the 7 possible types, guess which brand was highly probable to match the impressions? Yeah, wild country. Meanwhile, police had actually located little Patricia at a friend of Philip's, Father of the Year, dumping his poor little girl at a friend's house and never coming back. She's not going to have issues when she grows up. When they interviewed the little girl, she said that Joshan never left their bedroom. According to her, they'd gone swimming and fishing all day. They came back home, played video games and watched TV, and it was just a fun day. And she took a nap in the living room. When she woke up, her daddy and Joshan were gone. This is the part that kills me. Little girl said, Daddy and Joshan must have left, and she didn't know where her daddy was hiding. Oh my God, hiding. What a piece of shit he is as a father. Anyway, detectives were certain that Philip would reach out to his roommate, so they tapped the roommate's phone, again with a warrant. Didn't take long for them to hit pay dirt, though. They traced an incoming call from a payphone in Fayetteville, North Carolina. During their search into Philip's past and background, they came across ties to an air conditioning business that he had ties with in the area. Tick, tock, boom. They found him and arrested him. When they brought him in for questioning, you can imagine, he danced around the subjects, laughing at questions regarding how many women that he'd been with and how many he picked up. This guy loved himself. Let me tell you, the arrogance was staggering, if not a little entertaining.
You remember Joshan if I showed you a picture of her?
I don't know. You don't know how many girls I meet, see
Well,
one time.
I'm talking about the one. I am talking about the one that was at Fred's house. You two were together.
I'm listening to you, but I still don't know.
Well, once Philip was in custody, police could get a DNA sample from him, the old buccal swab, and compared it to the evidence found at the crime scene. And guess whose DNA matched the hair in Joshan's hand? That little hair that was embedded? Yep, Philip. Best to shut up now, boy. Never mind. Keep talking. Just to cross their T's and dot their I's, they went and they searched the roommate's car in the house with greater detail. And they found some sketchy stuff, then eventually came back to nothing involving in this case. And once in his alibi, where he was on the day of the murder, came back clean, and they came to the conclusion he had nothing to do with any of this. He was absolutely cleared. Nothing. Philip, though, he was charged with first-degree murder, and he went to trial, of course, dragging the poor family through the horrific details of Joshan's murder. And this asshole even laughed and winked at her family throughout the trial, like some sort of fucking demon. I wonder if he chuckled or flirted with anyone when they read aloud that he was sentenced to death. Still funny, boo thing? And while we're laughing at him. Now, if anyone out there is short, shut up, big deal. When you're a killer, though, it's funny. He's listed as 5'6", and you know that motherfucker isn't 5'6", he's 5'4", if anything. I say I'm 5'7" all the time. My short ass is 5'5". Anyway, I'm taller than this mean, big, bad boy killer man, so, he's probably mad that Joshan was taller than he was, He's still on death row for some reason. Let's juice this guy, can we? It won't take much, lethal injection since he's so little. Anyway, Well, that is it for this case. I mean, this is another one I've never heard of, and I started watching it while I was on the treadmill at the gym, and I was getting so mad. And I watched another one today. I was doing weights today, and my little phone was on the floor, and I'm like, just pulling them, goddamn motherfucker. So that's going to be one of my next cases, because this one pissed me.
You're always angry.
But, you know, this piece of crap, you know, like, you're laughing in court at the family. Like, who's laughing at you now? All of us. That's who, Shorty. We're laughing at you. Literally, Shorty, not just a little, little nickname. You are Shorty. Anyway, I like to think somewhere, though, while we're on the, subject of making fun of him, that Joshan would probably give us a high five and would totally offer to loan him her Timberlands. That's probably what this happened, is that he needed a couple of more inches of height and she didn't want to take her shoes off. I'm just kidding, little thing. Man, I'm sorry that's not the only place he's small. What?
What?
Yeah, so we'll see you in the next video. Bye. Definitely gonna get banned.
Joke's on you, I'm into that shit!